A3C. That's right, we moved the Atlanta Innovation Studio powered by Mailchimp from Venture Atlanta to A3C. Starting out the day, the energy is great here as tech and creative talent from all over the country come to Atlanta as we celebrate our innovators here. And I am joined here with Dwayna Haley, our Chief Brand and Communication Officer once again, and Barry Givens of many things, including Collab and Techstars. And of course, Jasmine Crow, Gooder, which we talked on social media the other day, so always good to talk to you. And look, there's so much we could talk about. I do want to talk about social entrepreneurism. I want to talk about our moment here, amazing moment we're here in Atlanta. But talk a little bit though, for someone who may not know, what you do. Talk a little bit about Gooder, and then definitely Barry, let's talk about Collab and what you're doing with Techstars as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Alex. Love you guys and the Chamber and the City of Atlanta, of course. Gooder really sits at the intersection of food waste and hunger. And so we help businesses divert all of their food waste. If it's edible, we get it to people in need. If it's not edible, we can turn it into compost, animal feed, or even energy. So we really are helping customers reach their net zero goals, reach their sustainable development goals, and become and improve their carbon footprint. And so it's been a great run. We've now helped customers save over $10 million in taxes for their food donations. Wow. We've provided 30 million meals, and we are on par to divert about 5 million pounds from landfills.
That's
so
amazing.
it's good work.
That's amazing. All right, top that.
Well, I'm now about to go apply to Gooder to see if I can work there. So as you know, I have two roles. I have one role at Techstars where I serve as Managing Director of our social impact program. So we look for founders like Jasmine and companies like Gooder that are looking to make a positive impact in our world, whether it's through environment, underserved communities, or underrepresented individuals. And so we run that program once a year, 10 companies, $120,000. And we try to get 2 years of work done in 13 weeks. That's the goal. And then I'm also one of the managing partners at Collab Capital, where we've raised a little under $52 million to invest in solely Black-led companies focused on innovation. So whether they're product-based or mostly software, but it's something that most people haven't been bold enough to do, to go out with the intentionality to say we are focused not on diversity, not on underrepresented, not on any of the other.
I don't even, when he's saying most people, I don't think anybody has been bold enough to do that. So let's just say no one's done
anyone.
that.
I try not to, because there's always something, history that we don't know. And so we're the only one that I know, but I won't say we're the only one. But yeah, it's great. We've invested in 12 companies so far. We'll be deploying this money over the next 4 or 5 years. We write checks between $350 all the way up to $1 million into early stage companies. We're not afraid to be the only check and first check into a company. We don't need validation from anybody. We have the expertise, the background to be able to make those decisions. And it's just great being able to support Black founders, as I once was one, looking for capital, and we've just never been able to get Black founders the support and the money that they need to really grow large companies, and we're just glad to be playing a role in that.
Yeah. So I was just going to say quickly, so I actually first learned about Gooder at the top, I'll say, of 2018. And then I went to the EAT conference in Sweden.
Yes.
And there was the Princess of Sweden, I want to say, on stage doing like the opening, Apple launch moment, with all the big screens. And she was like, we are trying to get to a place where we're doing things in local communities. Like, have you all ever heard of Jasmine Crow and Gooder? What? And I was like, wait a minute, that's Atlanta.
That's so
Atlanta.
crazy.
That was literally like the first time I realized
Who is this princess?
So I've never had royalty talk about
me. Right. I'm telling my assistant to book us a flight to Sweden. Let's go talk to them.
The EAT conference.
That is so crazy.
If they have not contacted you, they absolutely are following along with what you are doing, and just wanted to share that because it has global impact.
That is so crazy.
That was 2018, and you've grown so much more since then.
We're doing a lot more. I honestly think that Gooder will, given the funding that we need to get, will make our first, launch into furthering North America, probably Canada or Mexico. We get a ton of requests from resorts and hotels in Mexico because there's all this food and then there's so much need once you get into the deep parts of the cities. But we get a lot of requests also from Canada.
Wow.
So, I think North America, all over North America first, and then we got to go to Sweden because the princess has requested us.
It's globally represented. Well, talk about this moment then here in Atlanta. It's a great, kind of transition here. Talk about how you feel about this moment. I mean, where we were just even, it feels like, Dwayne and I talk about this all the time. It's every week, every day, there's new news. You have, you got royalty talking about you.
It's crazy.
You have unicorns born, every day. Of course, we know about Mailchimp and Spanx over the last, couple of weeks, the news they've been getting. We have funds being born. So many people think it happened overnight, but it hasn't. So, kind of, what's your thoughts about the moment we're here in Atlanta?
You know what I love about that is that I feel like somewhat connected to everybody that's big or doing something in Atlanta. Like I've worked with Sarah Blakely, I've worked with Spanx, I've worked with Mailchimp, I work with Barry. Like that's what I love about Atlanta. It's just like we have like this culture of connectivity and support. And I do believe that there were people in Atlanta that I don't know personally that were like speaking my name in rooms at their companies and were getting me meetings and just that's what I love about Atlanta. And I think it's like Southern hospitality.
Yeah,
but now it's really,
right.
I think we're just having our moment, but it's just so incredible. Like it's past due.
Right.
We're like, I think it's the greatest city. I mean, I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, Miami this, but I think, no, you have to come to Atlanta. Like this is really where it is.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. So people yesterday at Venture Atlanta was talking about the new definition of Southern hospitality is what's happening in tech right now.
Okay,
in terms of collaboration. So,
yeah,
I mean that's the thing, right? It's like we've been doing this for a long time. Like I started my company in 2012, and it wasn't this bustling. It was starting, right? You had little pockets here and there, but what we're seeing today started like 10 years ago, and it all started with that collaboration, and literally is why we named our fund Collab Capital.
Oh, so makes sense.
Because when you look at our ecosystem now, as you talk about Spanx, right?
Yeah.
I made one phone call and I pitched Jesse, Sarah's husband, on investing in my company. They didn't end up investing, but like the fact that I could make one phone call and get to, a billionaire walking around the city that I've never seen, he's never heard of me, never heard of him. You don't get that in other ecosystems, right? You cannot get to people and places without having that connectivity, without having someone that's, that's very close to that person. And so here in Atlanta, we have built this like as an ecosystem, right? We have, and I think, not to throw Miami under the bus, because I think they're doing great work too.
No, we can do that.
But you can't be a fry in the pan, right? You can't just one day wake up and say, oh, we're here. Like we've been incubating this feeling that we have today. We've been incubating the successes and the connectivity and all of these things. Like I've been watching Jasmine from when she had the idea back in Goody Nation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then when you transfer all of that connectivity over specifically to diversity, and even more specific into the Black tech ecosystem here in Atlanta, I mean, Jasmine is that first like shining example of coming from a non-tech background, walking into one of our flagship programs with Joey and the godfather of Atlanta Black Tech, and Justin with Goody Nation, with an idea, and even the support that gave her beyond just her idea, to then coming forward and Jewel, and like just, I mean, she literally went through the entire spectrum of Atlanta, and that's why, she's sitting here really successful, because if we support more dope entrepreneurs like Jasmine, we'll get this kind of success. And we have, it's a million, not saying you're not one of the million,
no.
But there are a lot of other talented people with great ideas that we can use this connectivity to do that. And this won't be the only moment, right? We'll have many more moments because of what we've incubated over the last 10 years.
Right, absolutely.
I love
Well, you talked a little bit about, not being afraid to be, first and only money on the table for, Black founders and entrepreneurs. And even you were talking about just some of the current challenges. So I know like we as a country in the middle of a bit of a social reckoning. And while we have a great ecosystem here, there's still a gap. And the progress that needs to be made for Black founders and entrepreneurs. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges that exist today, and maybe how each of you in the and how you are doing your business is kind of helping to kind of close that gap?
You know, I was looking and doing some research recently, and we talk a lot about how many, I think now we've gotten over 100 black women have raised over $1 million. I think, and that may not even be true, but I think we're over 100. But it's about getting to the next level, and that's when it gets harder. Yeah. So there's been all of these, you know, pledges, and we're going to invest more, and we're going to be more diverse, and we're going to hire more diversity. But it still hasn't happened yet. I think a lot of it has just been, I don't want to say like talk, but it's kind of like we got to say something, and we don't really hold people to that. And it's when you look at the numbers of black females specifically, and that's where I could kind of speak to, that get to the Series A's and the Series B's, that's when it's even harder. I mean, now it's like we're talking a whole nother level of challenges because it's already hard just to get in the door. Now it's kind of like, okay, we let you in, and we're just you got to be amazing or phenomenal. Like, I don't even know how much greater you could get, because I definitely think we have the numbers. We've been extremely capital efficient. We've been lean. The things that we've done with a team of 11 is something that so many people don't even do with teams of 40, getting a lot of money out the door. So I just think it's about, it has to be going higher, like, you know, and it's just tough. You know, it can't, I think a lot of it, as you said, it's like there's all these early stage funds, there's all this early stage money, but what about further on? Because if you're, it's kind of like you let people into college. What if they want to go to graduate school? You know, and now they don't get into graduate school, then their dreams are stifled. You know, they just have the bachelor's degree and they wanted a PhD. And so I think that's where there's just a need for more opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, as everyone up here knows, I'm very blunt. This is why we did it ourselves. Right? Like, I went through all the phases of like, oh, let's try to work with people, and oh, let's try to coach people and teach people to do better and act better. And what you'll see is like people have these really big funds and they're deploying, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, especially in this growth level. And they're like, oh, we made these 2 investments, and they'll billboard them and talk about them all the way. And it's like, that's like 0.25% of your fund. Right? Even when we talk about 100 black women getting, when that stuff goes through the media, it's like 100 is horrible.
Right. It's not even anything to be proud of.
That's not even anything to brag about. That is not a good metric. Like, we should be in the thousands and, you know, tens of thousands of women that have been funded, or black women that have been funded. And we have to stop speaking those numbers, because now they think that is a benchmark. And then now it's like, oh, we're at 200. We beat that 100 number they've been talking about. And that's why we just went out and did it. Right? Like, and so I try to put blinders on and not think about who's doing what over here or how many people. Like, we don't even use those numbers that everybody throws around. 2% of black people have gotten. You won't even find them on our website. Because those numbers don't really matter to me. It's about what blocking and tackling can we do today to make sure that the founders that we're interacting with are getting support, are getting money, and then maybe people will see the work that we're doing, they'll see the success that our founders are having. And even though Jasmine may not be an investment, we're going to put her in rooms and speak her name in places so that everyone can see how successful black founders can be. And you just have to get to the point where white investors feel as if they are missing out by not having these opportunities. And the only way to do that is to build those black founders up ourselves. So we just do it within the community, and we start to get support from people outside the community, outside of our community. And we just do the work.
Well, I realize that's how it happens.
That's how it happens.
Jasmine talked about a challenge. Barry said, you know, after session, like, let's rap. Like, I got you. Like, let's figure it out. And that's one. It's the beauty of the ecosystem and community that happens within Atlanta. But I also love how special that connectivity is between black founders and entrepreneurs, and making sure that each other are giving each other resources and you know, the things to get ahead. So I love
and
that.
You're also, you really are an innovator. I mean, you're obviously innovators as a founder, but you're an innovator also as a venture capitalist, as an investor.
Very
and it seems like right now what you're seeing is so many in Atlanta are reinventing what is entrepreneurism, what is venture capital, what Jay Bailey is doing at Russell Innovation Center. I'm like, that's more than an incubator. He's reinventing what entrepreneurism is. So I think that's what's exciting too.
Jay was like one of my very first mentors, one of the first people I told about Gooder too. So, you know, we're all connected. Even though we're like in different realms, we're all connected.
Well, and kind of to that as well, I mean, even think of the magnitude of what's happening. You know, I think with Gooder, and also what you're doing with Techstars and the social impact, accelerator with Cox. let's talk about a little bit of social entrepreneurship, because that in itself is innovative too. Because I'm sure you've had people go, "Oh, are you a nonprofit?"
Or you should be, yeah. Why did, yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about social, impact companies, and it is, you can make money, and you do have to raise money to do good. Talk about kind of that perspective.
I think for me, like even when I'm talking to investors now, I'm very clear in saying I need mission-aligned investors that when I come to a board meeting and say this quarter we did 10 million in revenue, but we fed 30 million people, that there's excitement on both of those lines, that it's not only going to just be about money, because it really is important for us, because this is what we do. One of the things that I love about Gooder, and I always tell my team, every single day we're in business, like there's this whole thing like, but if not for Gooder, if not for Gooder this, if not for Gooder this, there's people that just would not be eating. And we see the emails, we get the phone calls of people that are just like, you don't know how much you've helped my family or what this means. And so for every dollar that we make, it's tied to impact. And so when people say like, why do you want to be venture backed? I always say, because it's in, why do you want to be high growth? Because we're solving really big problems. And so if we grow really fast, that means we're solving these problems. That means more people are eating, less food is going to landfill. Like that's why we want it to be venture backed, as opposed to a nonprofit where we would constantly be having to raise donations. And it's tough because it's a totally different model. But why wouldn't you want to be high growth if you're solving a really big problem? This isn't a social network. We're helping people eat. Then of course we want to see more money get into us and put gas on this fire so that we can end hunger and reduce food waste. So I think that's what makes the impact space. And that's why it's hard to do, Alex, to explain that to investors sometimes, because that's what it's about. It's about creating more impact.
At its core, though, you're still solving a problem.
Still solving big problems for customers.
Needed. Absolutely.
And really with us, I think we're in a good place. I started working on Gooder 5 years ago. We'll officially be a company for 5 years in January of this year. But I started working on this around this time in 2016 when I entered Goody Nation. And it was like a nice to have, but I think people still were like way too early. Now you have the SEC saying to public companies, you're going to have to start reporting on your sustainability metrics. And here Gooder is to roll all that up for them and make it so easy that it's going to be like, oh gosh,
and it's beautiful. It all works together.
It all came together. But 5 years ago, people thought, oh, this is just so charitable. Now they're like, okay, the SEC's involved. This is no longer charitable anymore.
But how about you? I mean, you've seen so many social impact companies, obviously at Techstars. What's your thinking about that?
Tons.
The reason I took the role is because we claim to be in this space of innovation, right? Like we're solving you talk to venture capitalists, and why do you do the work? We're putting money to solve the world's biggest problems, and it's like, you have two guys that are right now fighting for who can spend 15 seconds in space.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And it's kids right now in Southwest Atlanta that are dependent on Jasmine to eat. That don't have, when we went home for the pandemic, don't have internet. Right? Like their dads are working 3-4 jobs because we can't even raise minimum wage correctly. Right? Like, so we have all of these problems that we are supposed to be the industry that's fixing all the big problems, that's doing all this innovative work, and nobody cares about the work that really needs to be done that's sitting in those seats. And so I view this as an opportunity to be in a leadership position where I can say, hey, I'm going to put to the forefront people that are in the trenches solving the problems that matter, and then I'm going to hold people accountable for giving these individuals money so that we can scale these businesses. And so I get the same pushback, like as someone trying to help them get funded, of like, there, we love it, right? We love the mission, and is there a way we can donate, right? Like, no, you can't donate, you can get a return. Like Jasmine's not up here just talking about 30 million people being fed. She's saving corporations millions of dollars, and it's only raised $2 million, right? Like you have companies that have raised $40-50 million that are still focused on product market fit, right? And so how can we not, as innovators, as people solving the world's largest problems, sitting in the seat that I sit in, not support these type of businesses that are really changing the dynamic of our country? Because right now, the gap between the haves and the have-nots is worse than it's ever been. And we're going to continue to do that if we don't solve some of those problems for those have-nots, because it's not their fault a lot of times. And so I'm not getting on my soapbox too long.
But I love that.
That's why I do it, and we need more people in this space, and not just at impact funds.
Right.
We need the Andreessens, we need the Sequoias, we need these
and then
big
even
funds.
the impact funds, I still think are like looking at like returns, and I think they have a mandate. They may say like, we want to invest in companies that are doing impactful work, but they're still kind of, because I've definitely talked to a lot of them. I had someone, I was with Goldman Sachs last week in California, and I was talking to a guy who has raised like a lot of money, maybe 200 million. And he was like, oh, I just don't know if it's like a big enough problem. Maybe that's why investors aren't investing. And I'm thinking like,
oh my goodness,
it's world hunger. Like it affects one in 8 people on the planet. Like I think it's a big problem, but
this is where diversity and leadership comes in.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not a problem for them.
Right.
And it's never been
an exit. Right.
And
They
it's
may have
never
never
been
had a family member. They may have never had anyone in close proximity to them. They think hunger is not an issue. They think internet. They probably think everyone in America has internet. Like when you live in a bubble for so long, you don't see these things. So when you get people from diverse backgrounds coming into these roles, and you invest in diverse founders that are solving these problems, you can then see, just by letting them in the room and listening and not being a know-it-all and listening to the Jasmines of the world, they'll tell you how big the problem is in this space that you have no clue exists.
Right.
Like there's money to be made in feeding people.
Well,
a lot of money gets spent on feeding people till this day.
Yeah, how you start, whenever you start your story in terms of how you even the idea of gooder.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a perspective that so many people don't have, the experience, what really drove you to do it.
Yeah.
One, it's inspiring in itself. But
Yeah.
why not put millions and millions of dollars behind solving this problem? I mean, frankly, billions of dollars behind solving this problem.
Billions.
So I think
I
it's
think
great.
it.
Or we're almost at it. We could spend the entire day with you two for sure, and we'll figure out ways to do that. I'm sure. This is one of many. But before we wrap up, because I'm sure we have a lot of founders watching, or a lot of creatives as well watching, what's that one piece of advice you would give them as they try to navigate, whether that seed stage, idea stage, or frankly, where they're starting to grow and they're figuring out that growth stage? What's that one piece of advice you would give them?
I would just say, I'm torn between like just always believing your vision and then get started.
Yeah.
Because so many people are like, oh, this isn't gonna work, this isn't gonna scale. And I kept on saying, especially if they're social entrepreneurs, you will never, a day will never be wasted if you're spending and building on trying to solve a big problem. So the biggest thing is just to get started. And that's what I used to tell myself, like, every day you're in business, someone's gonna be eating, and so it's worth it. Yeah.
Do the work, right? Like it's very similar to what Jasmine was just saying, but there are a lot of people that approach me with, I have this idea, I have this thought, I want to do this, and you're a lot in these early stages as a founder, you're a lot more likely to get me to respond if you say, look at this, right? Like it's hard, everyone has ideas, everyone comes up and has something in their brain, but I want to at least, even if you want to get coffee with me, right, or any investor, or even a mentor, anyone, do the work. Like do those first couple steps, like Jasmine mentioned, even if it's not all the way right. None of us get it all the way right. We're that early.
Yeah.
But you have to show me that you're willing to put in that sweat equity and that personal, not financial capital, but your time, right, into whatever it is you want me to spend my time on. And so you got to do the work, like do that early work, and then maybe you'll find the right person, get into the right incubator, whatever it may be, but you have to do that early work to make it there.
Right. This is great. This is amazing. What a way to start
we thought
the day.
it was going to be.
And by the way, one little tidbit, the fact that we're calling Joey the Godfather.
I love that. I thought that was, shout out to Joey Womack, man.
I mean, he's done so much for this community.
Especially on the social entrepreneurship side, too. He's helped many cities, inclusive, gooder, just a lot of people. And he's always been a good person just to try and make things happen. So I have a lot of love and respect for him. Oh, wow, he's your idol. Wow. Joey, I hope you heard that. That's crazy.
We got it on wax.
Well, thank you too for everything you're doing, and for innovating entrepreneurship and capital and everything. You really are, at the forefront of what's happening. I think for not just for Atlanta, but for the world. So thanks for everything you do, and thanks to all of you for joining us here for our firfirst session live from A3C, the Atlanta Innovation Studio, powered by Mailchimp, and we'll be back in a few minutes with Jay Bailey. back live at A3C with the Atlanta Innovation Studio, powered by Mailchimp. And always looking forward to this conversation.
My man.
My good friend Jay Bailey. Jay, nice to see you again.
Oh, it's always good to be seen, man. It's good to be back in the gathering spot around people.
Person,
oh, brother.
Oh, yeah.
So it's good to like reach out and
Exactly,
touch you. Yeah,
exactly.
my man.
And we were at Venture Atlanta the last few days, and that was buzzing. Now this, so there's a session going on. There'll be a lot of people coming through.
Sure.
So Jay, first of all, I have to ask the most important question.
Uh-oh.
How's fatherhood?
So Alex, you've actually never met me before. I am a totally different person.
Yes.
I've always talked about legacy. I've always talked about generational planning. To now be able to, in real time, hold it in my hands, brother, my whole world's different. Everything seems focused. Everything, if you've met me before and I was energized and I was focused and I was driven, take that times 10, easily.
Yeah, well, it's anytime someone is about to have a kid, and it's starting to age here, showing my age. With me having teenagers and young adults, but it is something that you can't describe what it is once you have your kid. Everything changes inside you. It makes you more purposeful, though, right?
And everybody, they tell you about it, but it's something you feel. And so when you talk about purposeful, the alignment and the clarity that I have now about what I need to do with this time that we have right now on Earth.
Right.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I got from a good friend, Greg Clay, that's here in Atlanta, he said, Jay, when Blaine was pregnant, he said, Jay, everybody knows you're going to be a good father. No question about that. What we need you to focus on is being a really dope great-great-great-grandfather. And it hit me. He was like, okay, yes, you'll be able to do this on autopilot, but what are you doing right now that will impact 7 generations yet unborn? What are you doing now where your life will have relevance to generations you'll never meet? And brother, it hit like a brick. And I started getting laser focused on what does legacy building look like? What does a generational wealth strategy look like? What does generational impact look like? And so you find me here now, man. I'm charged up.
Yeah, as you are, and it's good to have you. Jay took a little bit of a summer break, as he should have.
You know what, though? I learned.
Yeah.
I took a pause from the world, and it kept spinning, Alex.
Yeah.
And it was a lesson that I needed to learn.
Yeah.
It was a lesson that I needed to learn.
It's amazing the world goes on, right?
It just kept spinning.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about, obviously, Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs, which, of course, I feel like everybody should know about it. And if they don't, shame on them. But one thing I had to kind of set you up about that. One of the things I've noticed telling people is when they say, oh, is it an incubator, accelerator? It's not. Because I believe what you're doing there is really reinventing entrepreneurship. And not just for Atlanta, but for the country, for the world. So how do you think about that, and what are you doing?
I did a lot of study before we did anything. I spent a good 6 months going to all the incubators, accelerators, visiting, talking to people, hearing the gaps, talking to entrepreneurs. And, one of the things that I continued to find is that we always focus on access to capital, but not enough on community. And I think many people design programs that really focus on being informative. We got a lot of information over here. You come to us for 6 weeks, we're going to give you all this information. They talk about the informative, but not the transformative. How do I actually make Alex a better entrepreneur on the back end, a better person that then translates to a better business? So how can I look at the anxiety, the depression, the loneliness, the self-confidence, the belief that's necessary for you to be a successful entrepreneur, rather than just trying to give you curriculum. Now, once I can focus on that community, that culture, that covenant, that belief, that self-esteem, that confidence, wrap it around a world-class curriculum, world-class instructors, but don't rely just on my staff. If I got a fintech company, I'm going to Fiserv. If I'm looking at a logistics company, I'm calling UPS. So these businesses can learn from the best in the world, but as I tell all of our partners, it's not just about what you can teach them. If I'm a small business and I'm getting taught logistics by UPS,
oh my God,
what does that do for my self-esteem, my self-confidence, my belief? Now I've matched that with world-class knowledge, time for me to fly on a continuum of engagement for the life cycle of a business. So I don't necessarily believe in like social promotion, where if you stay with us for 2 weeks, you move to the next level. If your company is not ready and has the solid foundation to move to the next level, you don't move. And creating this circular economy that allows for you, as you grow, to always have a support network, to always have a community, always being able to plug into resources, and always having a family that supports. It's one of the things that I saw was one of the greatest deficiencies in the startup entrepreneurship ecosystem, this continuum.
Yeah. So, it's interesting because you just talking about UPS and all that. Well, first of all, how long has it been now for Russell Innovation Center?
I was hired about 3 years ago.
Yeah, I feel like it was just the other, it's still the other day, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, really, when you think about it. But the headlines that you're constantly getting about a big company, name some of the companies now that are kind of backing the organization, because it's an all-star list.
We've got a few more, so stay tuned. We got some big announcements coming. But
you're like unicorns in Atlanta. Every week there's a new one.
Brother,
So
they're true indeed. A-Town down. I love Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's everybody's come on board. So Truist and Home Depot, Coca-Cola, Wells Fargo, UPS, Fiserv, Chick-fil-A, all of these institutions that have made Atlanta great from a corporate citizen perspective.
Right.
When we pitched the vision of what we wanted to do, we haven't had many no's.
Right.
Quite honestly, brother, I don't know if we've had any no's.
I could just say no to it.
Well, and part of that may be that I'm not going to accept no as an answer.
Right.
But others get the vision and understand Atlanta is in this unique position right now to do something incredibly special.
Right.
And I don't know if anybody wants to be the company that at the end of 10 years when this thing explodes, that they weren't on the right side of history.
But I do think you are redefining entrepreneurship, helping it redefine what venture capital can be, or whatever we want to call it. Just call it capital. Who knows
Certainly.
what it could be? Redefining how you learn. So you're right. How can a business say no to it, or else you're going to be left behind? Because now UPS is getting access to some incredible innovation that they may not have that access to, right? By helping that as well too. And I think it also helps too. You've always said this, that you make sure entrepreneurs are ready to handle the scale.
We're only in two businesses.
Companies. Right.
That's it. We're in the readiness business and the access business. If we do our job, Alex, we will have the most comprehensive platform to get a company to do business, be ready to do business at the next level. Whatever that means for them. Everybody's not going to be a unicorn. Maybe you actually just want to scale to this level, but you're going to be at a point of readiness where you can execute. And once you're at that point, giving you the access to soar, whatever that means.
Yeah.
So I think it's part of the whole in the supply chain when we say we need more diverse suppliers. But who's getting those suppliers ready to be suppliers to your company?
Yeah.
How do I get Delta ready? How do I get UPS ready? And yes, you can get me certified, but how do I get ready, and who's going to be that bridge between Delta saying we need more and us having the talent pool of companies that can fill that gap? It's been a void, and we're going to try to fill it.
And it's been, we talk about supplier diversity, or access, because it's such a big, it's a big issue. A lot of people are trying to solve it. It seems like you're positioned to be really the ultimate person to connect the dots on that.
We want to become known for that. We want to become known for access, opportunity, and exposure. Part of our ask with any of our corporate partners is not just about the dollars.
Right.
It is literally UPS or Fiserv. If you're going to be a partner, then you got to open the kimono. If you've got to help us understand what it takes to do business with you.
Right.
And I swear, if we could understand from these companies where the hockey puck is going, we can train the next Wayne Gretzky to score.
Right.
And that's part of the conversation. What are your present needs? Well, let's have a deep conversation about your future needs, because companies can be built on those future needs.
Right.
They've got a first customer and they're to the races.
Right. So getting these companies ready, what is it that you look for in that founder? Because you and I talked about this before. Everybody can't be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Everybody's not going to be successful. It is about giving more access, but there's still going to be people who aren't going to be able to make it. So,
Sure.
So what do you look for to help make sure a company can make it?
We're
or
in a
the
unique
founder?
position because we're such a large center.
Yeah.
Because we really preach this narrative of being a place where people can get the information they need. So we built our big ideas model to do exactly that, though.
Yeah.
Kind of like college. Everybody's not going to graduate.
Right.
But there's a way you come in as a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, graduate school, PhD. But if you don't make it out of freshman year, you're never going to graduate.
Right.
So our Inspire, Develop, Execute, Accelerate, Scale
Right.
does a bit of that. It provides hope to anybody that dreams.
Right.
And in the Inspire stage, you're talking about, I got an idea, and how do I go from just curiosity to a concept? But in Develop, we're all focusing on, okay, we got a concept, but how do you build a solid foundation for your company?
Right.
And is there a there at all?
Right.
And then in the execute phase, I'm a firm believer execution trumps everything in entrepreneurship, where you spend the entire time finding your customer. And if you can't find your customer, maybe you're solving the wrong problem.
Right.
But if you found your customer, you've created value, you can communicate that value, and the accelerate stage is now time to look at how do you actually build your capacity, more customers, earn revenue. And from there, once we've established that foothold, we go into scale, and that's all about growth.
Right.
My thing is that I cannot consciously cut off somebody that says I have a big dream.
Right.
I got to find a place for that person to onboard.
Right.
But we also have practices and what we call gauntlets in place to ensure as they move along that continuum,
Right.
that they're ready. And you might find somebody their sophomore year that says, I want to change my major.
I was going to say, I mean, that's
Or,
a part of
you know,
college, too.
I rather work with my hands.
Right.
Or a CEO that finds out they're a much better CFO.
Yeah.
And they've got a classmate that needs a good CFO.
Yeah.
They link and then they take off together.
Yeah.
But you've got to create the institution that manufactures hope at scale.
Right.
And that's what we want to do. And wherever your place is, I want to leave you with your dignity and saying that I believe in your idea.
Right.
But I also want to provide the platform that on your own, you will find out that this may be the right direction or the wrong direction.
Right.
And so it's been good. We're learning though. We've only been at this for 3 years, and 2 of those were during a pandemic and everything else. So we're learning how to best, articulate our value proposition and how we can make sure that we're moving entrepreneurs along the continuum.
Well, let's talk about these few years too. It's amazing, even in the midst of the pandemic and everything going on, we've seen this acceleration now in Atlanta. I mean, talk about a moment. We're here at A3C, music's playing as we got our creatives coming in here, technologists. It's unicorns that, as I mentioned earlier, are announced every day. Of course, the Mailchimp news, the Spanx, Calendly, Flocks. There's so much going on. Why do you think this moment is here now in Atlanta? What makes you excited about it?
It's been happening for a while.
Exactly.
I mean, you got to remember that this is the city that changed the entire world without firing a single shot.
Yeah.
And people have been coming and drawn to Atlanta for a number of reasons. We brought the whole world here for the Olympics.
Yep.
We were the home and the birthplace of the civil rights movement. So quite honestly, if you just put it out on a map, like a chronology map,
right,
it only makes sense that something catalytic would come from this city yet again.
Yep, that's
and I think in this space, it's around entrepreneurship, creativity.
Yeah.
Paul Judge says, and I love the way he articulates it, like we've got the corporations, we've got the culture, and we've got the colleges.
Yeah.
We have this nexus that I don't think there's any other city in America, maybe the world. Because I've been to Silicon Valley, love what they're doing in the Research Triangle, Asheville, Miami, Austin, certainly Silicon Valley. None of them gotten diversity right. None of them have made innovation inclusive.
Right.
Atlanta has the unique ingredients to actually do something that benefits all people in a way that nobody else has been able to do it.
Right.
And so when you have Georgia Tech down the street, and the whole AUC, and Georgia State, and Emory, and Agnes Scott, not to mention SCAD. You just keep adding these layers with a robust middle class and black professionals and this corporate network, a port within 3-4 hours. I mean, you start a logistics hub that the biggest logistics company in the world is in Atlanta.
Yep.
The largest fintech company in the world is in Atlanta.
Yep.
The largest, busiest airport in the world is in Atlanta.
Yep.
And I think that we always knew the script, we just forgot our lines. This was bound to happen because we have all the tangible assets.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do we? And what is the thing we have to make sure we capture? What's the thing we got to make sure we do as Atlanta to make sure we really continue this growth?
That it's as easy for it to work for you as it is for me.
Yeah.
Like that opportunity is one of those things that all have access to. I think we lose GDP every year because the brilliant ideas that exist in brown and black minds never reach the marketplace because they don't believe they belong.
Right.
A lot of the work that the chamber is doing is actually bridging the gap for these brilliant ideas that have a fair shot. And that's all I ask, is just everybody has a fair shot at opportunity. If we miss that mark and don't create these safe on-ramps for people that aren't your traditional white male, if we miss that mark, we lose. We all lose. But I don't think we're on it. I don't think we have any. I don't think there's any threat of us doing that. I think this momentum that we have right now is going to ensure a level of equity and inclusion that no other kind of ecosystem has demonstrated in the past 20, maybe 50 years.
Well, Jay, and I think it's having you here as an innovator and as a leader for all that I think is key too. And I always talk about that in addition to all the assets, the companies, the entrepreneurs, the capital. It's having the Jay Baileys of the world, the Russell Innovation Centers over the world, and everybody else that you collaborate so incredibly with, from the David Cummings to the Paul Judges, to the Jewels of the world, is what's going to make this possible. So, look, we could spend, as you know, all day, and it's fun. Wait, what is this? Is this number 9 or 10 for us?
I don't know, brother. It's good.
It's always something different. Always fun.
Always fun.
Jay, thanks again for being here.
That's what makes the magic happen, brother.
Yeah, absolutely.
We genuinely like each other. Atlanta's a small town wrapped around tall buildings.
Absolutely.
So those people we need to touch, we can. And brother, I consider it an honor to be able to touch you, my friend.
Yeah.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. And we'll be back here at A3C with more here in the Atlanta Innovation Studio, powered by Mailchimp.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Right. at A3C, just having a great time here in this music and tech festival after we spent 2 days at Venture Atlanta here at the Atlanta Innovation Studio, powered by Mailchimp. I'm Alex Gonzalez, and I am here with a good friend, Darren Eels of Atlanta United. How you doing, Darren?
Hi, Alex. Yeah, good to be here. Yeah, excited.
And so, of course, the first question after I'm going to ask a sports question first, then I'm going to ask what some people say. What is the president of Atlanta United doing at a music and tech festival, which you guys are a sponsor of, by the way. But let's talk a little bit about, just a real quick update on the team, because I know right now another exciting playoff race going on with Atlanta.
No, it's one of the good things with Major League Soccer is because we have a salary cap, it's always very tight. But this year there's about 4 points splitting between second and 10th, and the top 7 make the playoffs. We're 5th at the moment, so I feel pretty good. I think we've been good the second half of the season, and we've had the experience. So if we can get into the playoffs, I think we'll be a dangerous team.
Some big matches. Miami will be next week, so it'll be a fun, exciting match. So it'll be good to see that as well. Well, so let's talk about here, kind of starting here. I know since you've been here, you've always had an interest in the tech and creative community in particular. As you start building the brand for United, and Atlanta United is a sponsor here at A3C. Why is that kind of the creative and tech community important for you?
I think as we built the club, as you know, we're a pretty new club. We've only been going 5 years. And when we built the club, it was very much about focusing on Atlanta. And I love the city of Atlanta. It's this young, diverse, exciting, dynamic city. And I think when you look at our fan base, it sort of mirrors that. It mirrors that entrepreneurship, that creativity, that diversity. So I think there's a lot of synergies in how we built the club almost as a startup and with the tech community. So I think those synergies really sort of do bear out.
And if they kind of go back a little bit to the broader AMB Sports, which of course Arthur Blank's organization that runs United and the Falcons and the stadium, I believe, and maybe fill us in a little bit, there's been like a venture fund that was announced?
That's right, yeah. So we've got an AMBSE Ventures Fund. And again, I think it goes back. People forget with Arthur Blank, he was an ultimate startup guy. Home Depot was founder, one store here in the 70s in Atlanta that grew to be one of the biggest retailers in the world. So again, when I look at Atlanta United, having the mentorship of Arthur, someone that understood you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, that's part of his mindset, that innovation. So the Ventures Fund for us, we're looking within our sort of sphere, so sports and entertainment. We're excited. If I take, with my Atlanta United hat on, we're already testing a few things. Super Sapiens, a local company that does real-time glucose monitoring. So we're testing that out in partnership with them. So for us, it's about how can we sort of help, that venture in, we're looking nationally, but obviously if it's in our backyard, then it's something that we're interested in.
Yeah, well, that's pretty exciting too. And another thing that I know it's really kind of key to you, it's been a kind of cornerstone of the brand since even before the, soccer ball was kicked, is about fan experience, customer experience. And of course, if you think about Delta and Home Depot, everybody's worried about customer experience. But how have you kind of kept up with driving a unique fan experience in the brand? How do you make sure that you have this special United experience?
Again, I think, great credit to Arthur with his background. I think it's been the biggest learning for me coming from the English Premier League. So I must admit, you can almost take the fans for granted because there's a history where if your family was a Spurs supporter, for example, you'll still be a Spurs fan. I think here we were building a club from scratch. So in reality, we had to win it, hearts and minds, one fan at a time. And I think we just carried that on. So 5 years in, every decision we make, we think about the supporter, how it's going to affect them, and that's the lens through which we look at it. So, and you'll know this when we launched it, we had our mantra, Unite and Conquer. Unite was focused on the fans. So before we had players, we were using imagery of our fans as, as being part of the show, being part of the club. And then whenever we did the Conquer element, that was our player imagery. And we've continued that. So we've just recently been doing some Pride billboard around the city because it's, Pride Month in Atlanta. But we've used our supporters in those. So we're sort of showcasing our supporters, and I think that's the connection that our fans really feel with the club, that they really feel part of a movement, they feel part of something special, and it's vital that we continue that. We can't ever take that for granted.
And I think part of that too, one thing that always amazes me, which is just fantastic, is I still think we have the best support of any Major League Soccer team, in the country. And United is just mentioned by so much, particularly our younger, talent here in Atlanta. And it's so much part of pop culture. So how do you, and even everything from the Golden Spike ceremony in terms of getting the music, industry involved, what do you do to kind of keep embedded in pop culture and keep that excitement going?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think firstly the experience. I would say, and I would say this one night because I'm Atlanta United, but I think it's unique to all the sports in North America, the soccer culture. So if you come to an Atlanta United game, it's an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Everybody stands throughout the game. Our supporter section under the window to the city is non-stop singing, chanting, and they do the songs. They sort of, it's not us saying defense and telling them to chant. It's them creating the songs and the culture. And so what we try to do is just amplify that and help engage them. I think it's been the same with even the celebrity scene. So we've had celebrities from day one, but they're coming off their own backs because they want to enjoy the experience. So it's not us saying, look, we're going to pay you to come and make an appearance.
Right.
You know, they come to the match, they love it, and Waka Flock is a great example. He's been a friend of the club right from the start, right? The last game I had Sir Nick Faldo, so we had English sort of royalty hitting the spike, but then me and Waka Flock were doing a TikTok on the pitch afterwards from Squid Game's the red light, green light. So I use that as an example to show across all spectrums and all ages, all demographics. It's the excitement of a game, I think, that draws people back.
And I think it's been great too to showcase that I mean, really, we're this creative center and this, and this movie center, music center. I mean, Owen Wilson, of course, was when he was filming a movie here. I know he's been there.
And he was here Wednesday night. So Owen was. Owen came back with his kids.
Yeah.
And this is Owen because him and his kids love the experience, and I think that's the reality. It's not. They're doing it because it's unique. You come to an Atlanta United game. I mean, I love bragging about it. We're the top 10 in the world in attendance, but the atmosphere is incredible, and that is what's special, and that's what's unique. And what I really love about it, I feel it's a microcosm of Atlanta because you look at the stands, you look at the diversity, the age profile, and it's that thriving, exciting community that we've got here.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of discussion in the last few days and today about inclusion and it is amazing how much the United name comes up. And so I think that's a real testament to the brand building. And I'm sure early on it was like, well, a name like United, yes, it's been so perfect for Atlanta.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember early days, people were saying, well, United, there's another United, DC United. But remember, we'd spoken to our fans, we'd done focus groups, and it was clear that United meant more in Atlanta because of the diversity of the city, the history.
Right.
And look, the reality is, literally no one ever says anything about it now. It's the perfect fit for our city. It's the perfect sort of embodiment of what we're trying to do.
I think people actually rally around it.
Yeah.
I think it really gave somebody, I know for me being at a match and generationally and ethnicity, race and all that, and people really connect to it and believe this is what Atlanta should be too. Well, talk about kind of the world stage, because Atlanta United does have a big reach globally, so at least that's a perspective I get. But is the brand talked about outside the United States as well quite a bit now, particularly the players we have?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it's great now on recruitment of players because it used to be we were really hard sell, what Major League Soccer was, what Atlanta was as a city. But I'll use our latest signing, Luis Araujo, came from France, so came from the champions of France. And when we spoke to him, he'd already spoke to a couple of players that had played in the league, people that he knew, and they'd all been universal. Atlanta is a great place to go. So, that's an example of this global brand that we've got now. The other example I can give you is merchandise, so kit sales. So we have the kits, and the way it works is Adidas said about 8 years ago they made a decision that they were only going to allow an extra kit if you reached a certain threshold.
Right.
And they put the bar really high and no club had got to it until we came in. So we were able to have a third kit this year. It was our Unity kit. We launched it at the Center for Civil and Human Rights.
Yeah.
Again, speaking to what Atlanta is as a global city, but it was the first time that Adidas had taken a shirt from Major League Soccer and sold it globally. So again, we're now part of that conversation where Atlanta United is seen as one of those big clubs in North America. I'd include, Mexico in that. We're seen as one of those big clubs, and that's obviously our big push because we want to be the top club in MLS, but our goal is to be a top global club.
And a global brand, right? Just like some of these other clubs, and Tottenham and all that. People think it's a true global brand. Well, speaking of the global picture, though, definitely getting your. I would love for you to kind of explain, for someone who does not know soccer or football, the FIFA World Cup, as we are one of the cities, obviously being being considered to host. How big really is the world, for someone who doesn't know it, how big of a deal is it?
It's massive. I think, if you still what blows my mind is in 1994, so the United States hosted the World Cup.
Yeah.
94, that was before MLS had started.
Yeah.
So there was no professional league at the time. And that's still the most ticketed World Cup ever. So this was, we're now, 30 years later where we've got a professional league in place. And to give it some sort of reference point, so the draw, so when they draw out the groups for the World Cup, so basically it's just a boring show with ping pong balls and they draw the group. That gets more viewers than the Super Bowl, just that event. So that gives you a perspective. The World Cup itself is 6, 7x a Super Bowl, and you're going to have 80 of those games in a World Cup. So from a TV, from a just recognition, it's huge. But actually from on the ground, it's such a lot of fun. And if Atlanta could get it, we're really hopeful that we could be, hosting 6, 7 games, perhaps have one of those later stage, really good knockout games, perhaps a semi-final. But what I love about World Cups, and I've obviously been to a few of them in my time, is Holland comes into town and you've got all the fans wearing the orange. You'll have the Ivory Coast coming in, bringing their culture. Honduras, whoever it is that's there that travels brings that culture, that party. So I think Atlanta is going to be an amazing city for it because we've got the airport, we've got the hotels downtown, we've got a campus where our stadium is that people can party and just have fun. I think it's going to be amazing.
Well, I'm looking, I will say for me personally, as someone who did not grow up with soccer, but then had a kid who played it, and then remember watching World Cup with him as a kid, that's what got me to fall in love with soccer. The global, the United, it's really everything we talk about that United is doing, it does it at a global stage.
No, it's huge, and look, it's a blessing for us as a league because we've got this chance in 26 to reach that next fan. I mean, we've done a fantastic job, and it's been incredible how the city's got behind the club. But our aim now is to build that more casual fan. Perhaps that fan that's never been to a soccer game before, hasn't really been interested. The World Cup draws them in, and then we get them to United games, and we really feel that there's a high ceiling for us.
Well, as we wrap up here, Darren, since we're here at the A3C Digital and Music Festival, I got to ask you about a new trend you're driving. You've caught on to a new trend, which is TikTok. So talk about your entry into the TikTok world.
Well, this is funny because our social media team brought it to me and said, look, I've got Twitter, I've got Instagram, would you do a TikTok account? I was like, okay, as long as, I'll give it a try, I'll see how it goes. And it was incredible because I did something with Jurgen Damm, so one of our Mexican players, he's got quite a lot of followers. We did a stupid thing where we were just basically following the camera around, and now in Major League Soccer it goes LA Galaxy, Atlanta United, and then my account's the third highest, more than any other club. We've got like 120,000 followers. I love it because it's so irreverent and fun. So like I said, we did a piece with Waka Flocka around Squid Games on the game, after the game on Wednesday. I just like that you can have fun with it, and that's what we stress in Atlanta United. It's we're in the entertainment industry, so sometimes we take it a little bit too seriously in all sports. We think that it's a matter of life and death, and clearly it isn't. It's about having fun, and I think the social media channels for me is another way for us to communicate with our fans and show a different side of the club, of the personalities, and that's what it's about. It's about drawing people in and engaging them.
Well, we talked several years ago when the club was just starting on Disruptor Studio, and we had you on there because I think you're an innovator and able to drive a culture of innovation and organization, and you continue to do so. So thanks for everything you're doing for Atlanta and supporting this also creative and innovation community. Because just so people don't know, Darren, behind the scenes here is really a huge supporter of the growth of our innovation and creative community here in Atlanta, along with Atlanta United. So thanks for doing that. Good luck. Looking forward to the upcoming match and the rest of the season and playoffs.
Cheers, Alex. Thanks a lot.
Nice
Appreciate it.
And we'll be back here at A3C Live shortly with some more great guests. back live at A3C with the Atlanta Innovation Studio powered by Mailchimp. I'm Alex Gonzalez. I'm here with good friend Audra Pittman. How you doing?
Happening,
How you
Alex?
doing?
I'm happy. It's a good Friday, man.
It is a great Friday. We're here at A3C.
This is so huge.
And I know that it's the lull now because there's a session going on.
Yes.
But what do you think of all this energy right now between creative and tech?
You know, this is just so Atlanta, right? It's culture, it's tech, it's innovation. It shows how the collision of everything makes everything great, and that's why Atlanta's great. I mean, that's why we're here.
So how does, of course, you do everything SCAD.
Yes,
So
all the things SCAD.
Talk a little bit about SCAD and how it fits into this ecosystem. Because if I talked before, sometimes people think it's just arts, which is really important, but it is very broad.
Oh my gosh, I always feel like SCAD, this is one of my dream jobs because we're on the cutting edge.
Right.
Nothing stale, nothing stagnant. Every day is like, oh, we're doing this is new. And innovation, if you think about it, I was just talking to Kamal Bob, right?
Yep.
And he's
Yeah.
Mr. STEM. And I'm like, no, it's STEAM. He's like, well, then that's education.
It is STEAM.
But I'm like, okay, so imagine Shuri from Black Panther. She's designing, her brothers. I'm like, if she didn't have the creativity, the innovation, the foresight, fabric, textiles, that thing would have looked like a clearance bin at a Halloween store. I mean, we wouldn't have Black Panther, you know? So I feel like creativity, design, convergence, divergence, like the way you think as an artist lends itself to tech and innovation. It's what sets apart brands from other. I mean, I kind of joke about Apple. I mean, we all have phones, but what sets Apple apart is the storytelling, it's the graphics, the design, everything. So that's what we do at SCAD, man.
Absolutely. And so have you felt really this growth? I mean, well, let me go back. Yesterday, Ben Chestnut, of course, of Mr. Mailchimp.
Yes.
He was on here in the studio, and he was on stage at Venture Atlanta as well. But while in the studio, he talked a lot just about creative talent, and he says that's the X factor. For
it's what sets
Atlanta.
Apart. Totally.
So have you seen a movement in a creative talent here?
Oh my gosh, we just welcomed our largest class ever into SCAD. We've seen a lot of people, if you think about the pandemic, right? What were we doing when you were locked up at home? We're looking at content, we're looking online. You gotta think about what sets apart. Streaming services, all of it is content. And we're creating content at SCAD, and that's what everyone comes to Atlanta for. I was just talking to folks, I said, when I moved here, it's the opportunity that exists in Atlanta. That's what makes people like allure and everything, like anything's possible because everyone works together. It's the collaborations.
And how do you see it going in the future? Like what sort of fields are you seeing people going into?
Well, I can tell you our top programs, obviously film and television, animation, motion media. We ranked #1 for I think the 5th year in a row by Rookies for motion media. And I think people take for granted like the commercials you see, or everything's designed by someone. It doesn't just happen. It's not just magic, And think about a good pitch deck versus a bad one. Think about great design and what it does and how it sets people apart. So I see the future as user experience, user interface, industrial design. You look at cars. We had Porsche come visit by. We have the Porsche experience here in Atlanta. And I'm like, do y'all understand someone literally sculpts the car 10 years in advance? They're looking at it now and how people interact with it. So, there's the sky's the limit, honestly.
And being a creative is not about just, you don't even have to draw to be a creative.
No, well, they got to take foundations
That's
classes.
true.
And a lot of them but it helps them understand.
The academic
but it helps them understand the foundation, like the principles, the elements of art.
I won't be able to go into SCAD. I can't
You
draw.
can. We'll get you a coach. We have visual coaches. Alex, we got you.
Jeez.
We got you, man. But, it's helping people understand, what's perspective, what's value, what makes good design. So when you're on a set, you understand that something in the foreground has more prominence than something in the background. So it's all the terminology, the language. We're helping build the vocabulary for our students so that when they go out into the field, they're able to articulate why something needs to be different or how something can be better.
Right, and I think it's so important too, if I think about even in big companies in particular, like there's so much structure and process analysis, which is so important. But that creative element, which is just the thinking, which is a little bit of driving that little bit of disruptive nature or thinking about curves instead of straight lines, that's so important. And
what's even funnier is like I look at Virgil Abloh, right? He's like Louis Vuitton men's designer. His actual idea is like he just changes 10% of something. So a lot of the things he has, you're like, wait, they already had that, but he puts off-white on it, and all of a sudden it's completely different. People look at it differently. So sometimes it just takes 10% of thinking differently, of thinking how you can create something, add something, take away something, and just think about it in a new way.
And I think it's also looking at different things outside of your
Oh,
norm.
absolutely. See, you know, I take you on tour, SCAD, all the time.
Yeah, of course, love it.
And sometimes people just walk by these textiles, and I'm like, wait, stop. Look at this large textile taking up the whole wall,
yeah.
right? This is Trish Anderson. People are like, great. She's from Dalton, the carpet capital of Georgia.
Right.
And if people stop and look at it, they'll notice, oh my God, there's red outlines of Coke bottles. Well,
Right.
Coke commissioned her to do this piece.
That's great.
To launch, peach Coke. So sometimes people just, they get so caught up in every day and what's going on. You're
Right.
like, stop, process, reflect, think, look at something. And that's what we do at SCAD. We help people see in a different way.
And how do you like now the growth of the neighborhood you're in? Of course, you're in Midtown.
Oh my
and
gosh,
you now have,
man.
I think your neighbor, Georgia Tech, and
Yep.
Hooker Broward talked about it's the hottest tech neighborhood in the country.
It's like this infill. I'm like, how much
goes over
higher can we
there.
go?
And it's kind of cool
Yeah.
because you have like a train company like Norfolk Southern coming in as a tech company.
Yes,
you have
Microsoft
NCM
across the
Microsoft.
bridge,
And how do
yeah.
you must love this growth.
Oh my God, it's like perfect for admissions. I'm like, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at all we have here. Oh, Mercedes in the distance, the gathering spot. Like
and lots of good
anything-
restaurants too.
Absolutely.
Yes, I do.
Absolutely. I mean, COVID-10. But no, it's so good. I love the energy. I mean, Midtown, this area is where it's at.
And then also, I think a lot of exciting too, because this will transition to whom you're going to talk to next. Of course, this guy who you talked about, Black Panther, the guy who
yes.
is in charge
Black
of
Panther. Where
curating
was
that place.
filmed?
Got a Trill
Trilla
Studios.
Oh yes,
The
Trilla. Another
movie
selling
and
point of
film,
Atlanta.
There's so much excitement. I mean, this is really, and in fact, I was just at Trilla recently.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable. And then you look at also some of the other studios in town,
Yes.
Third Rail and all that. I mean, it is real.
Yeah.
This is
Not
the
talking
place
it, we're
for
living
movies
it,
and
we're
film.
doing it, yeah.
And I imagine you're seeing that with your students and the studios reaching out to you
And
as
what
well.
I love is that our students are getting experience before they graduate. You know,
Yeah.
I remember in college, like, oh, let me focus on classwork and then I'll graduate and figure out what I'm doing with my life.
Yeah.
They're getting these job offers before they even graduate because they're PAs on sets, or they're
Yeah.
getting director experience, or they're meeting the cast and the behind the scenes folks. So it's pretty cool, man.
Well, we're going to turn it. So Audra is
Okay.
going to be joining us for the rest of the afternoon. She's going to be running the conversation with Frank Patterson, who of course is president of Trill Studios, an amazing creative himself.
Yeah,
And
excited.
then speaking of also creative and tech, you're going to be joining me in a conversation with Paul Judge and David Cummings, who really have been the catalysts of so much happening here in Atlanta. So looking forward to that conversation.
Sounds
so,
good, man.
So until then,
Ready.
we're gonna take a few minutes here to kind of reset here, and then come back here on the Atlanta Innovation Studio, powered by Mailchimp, live at A3C. So that's the only thing.
From Savannah College of Art and Design, and I'm here at the Atlanta Innovation Studio, powered by Mailchimp, at the A3C Festival. Like, going on in the gathering spots, there's a lot going on, a lot of music, but I am so privileged and honored to be joined by the Frank Patterson of Trilla Studios. Frank.
Hi, Audra. It's good to see
welcome.
you again.
Frank, why are you looking at me
oh
like
my
that?
gosh,
Like,
I just learned that I was going to appear on camera with you, Miss Fabulous and Brilliant,
oh my God.
and I was like,
Fabulous
oh my
and
gosh,
Frank.
please.
It's our new show.
I cannot believe we're doing this, but
it.
anyway. By the way, congratulations on everything that's going on at SCAD.
Well, congrats
Amazing.
to you too.
Yeah.
I just feel like we have this natural synergy. We graduate our students, we send them to Trilla,
I know,
right?
and you all do such a great job. You know, the leading art school who has a great focus in our world, in filmmaking, right,
yeah.
and storytelling. So I really appreciate all the work you and Paula and the whole team do.
Yes, yes. Well, Frank, I want to know. You know, I was kind of trying to, figure out what's happening at Trilla, and I know you can't talk about a lot, but what's happening for people who don't know about Trilla? I mean, everyone knows about Trilla, but what's happening?
Well, I think you know, we're here located about 20 minutes south of the airport, our fabulous airport,
yes.
and we have a history of doing big projects for the Walt Disney Company and Warner and Marvel. Right now, as you might imagine, we're packed. We have those are projects I can't really talk about, but as you might imagine, we have a lot of streaming projects
yes.
and we have some features.
Okay.
We have a couple of independent projects coming too that we're excited about. But you know, like most of the world, we're packed.
Yeah.
We're making content as fast as it can be made.
Okay.
I think you know, we were not, as an industry across the world, we were not making content fast enough before COVID hit, right? Everyone started subscribing to the streaming services. We started watching and consuming more content and more content. And we got to a place where really Wall Street's pouring more money into the film industry than we in the industry had the capacity to produce.
Even do that. Wow.
Right? That was before COVID, before everybody went home and started watching all the content.
Started watching all the content and subscribing.
While we had to stop making the content. So, you know, like, as you know, we're all trying to catch up, working long hours. We averted a strike. I was so happy to see our friends who are producers and our friends that are labor agree to work together and to make some important changes for safety.
Right.
So anyway, very busy. We also, I think you know, you and I have talked about this a couple of years ago. launched a technology pillar and a content pillar.
Wow, tell us more about that. What's going on?
Well, on the technology side, we all know, and you know this at SCAD, that there are a lot of technologies that are emerging right now that can really help filmmakers iterate and scale content. And so we'll be making an announcement next week that I'm very excited about.
Want to be there? Okay.
Yeah, and by the way, it just further promotes the kind of relationships we have with you in education, because they're highly technical jobs that require a sort of artistic eye.
Right.
We're focusing a lot of our efforts, I think everyone knows, on virtual production.
That's awesome.
And this is where gaming and the gaming industry meets.
It all collides.
Filmmaking and entertainment. And I think after the announcement next week, I think we're going to be able to say that we in Atlanta, we in Georgia, have the gold standard for virtual production, and I'm real excited about it.
Listen, Frank,
because you guys at SCAD have been in this for a while.
That XR, everything. It's just like the Mandalorian. People watch it, and you have to be future forward. You have to think about what's going to be the next thing. I tell people who come in here, I said 20 years ago, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have Instagram. All these jobs didn't exist. So now you have to think about the next 20 years and what's going to exist. How do you prepare them? So we're here. I mean, you think about Atlanta, you think music, tech, innovation, culture. You're a big selling point when I have people come for admissions tours. I'm like, well, there's Trilith down the road. Help people understand the different kinds of jobs that are in the industry. I think a lot of times people think of actors and actresses and a director, and that's what happens. But you're talking about technology, and what other kind of skill sets do people need to be able to work in this film and TV industry that's booming?
Well, it's interesting. All kinds of what we typically classify as white collar and blue collar jobs, right? I mean, we call them in the movie business. I never liked this term, but above the line and below the line.
Right.
The creatives, the writers, the directors, and then of course all the crew members who are really the most amazing people in the world. They range from, of course, famous jobs like cinematography to less known jobs of greensmen and women, people who are the landscape artists. Who really make a particular setting great, and so the average film on our lot will have 1,100 crew members.
Wow.
And they are all kinds of skills, from carpentry and electricians, and by the way, these are all people who also, you may think of them, for example, as an electrician, but they have a keen eye for light and how light plays a role in storytelling, for example.
I joke with my husband, I said, warm, cool lights our house, you mess it up. It looks like a clinical hospital. It can change the whole story narrative.
That's exactly right.
Now, Frank, I was joking with you earlier, your son's in college, and I'm trying to recruit him. He's studying English. We have a master's in dramatic writing, creative writing. This lends itself again to film and TV.
You do.
I think people don't really understand how the talent pipeline to build Georgia, to build this, what you have, what we have, investing and keeping people here, keeping the talent here and creating events like this is pretty crucial.
Well, what's neat about Atlanta, and one of the reasons I think when we were originally Pinewood's Atlanta Studios, and one of the core reasons that I think the Pinewood Group identified Atlanta was for the emerging talent base, right? We already have a great reputation in tech globally, and so we have a global reputation for young talent. And by the way, as you know, Atlanta was a media center long before the film incentive, right?
Totally.
In the 1990s with Turner and then Tyler, and then, and so we were really a perfect place for not only this industry, but also to grow the next generation of talent. And so what you're doing at SCAD and some of our other institutions are doing to really prepare that talent pipeline is absolutely critical to our success. I mean, literally, we couldn't be here, and we wouldn't be here without it. And the joke is there's a war on talent. We all know it. We're all trying to get talent. There's no such thing as a war. It's over. The talent won. They get anything they want. And so I just encourage, as I've spoken to your students and others, just focus, work hard, learn your craft, and this world of entertainment, as illustrated here at A3C. I mean, this is the most amazing festival and conference. I mean, for those who've never attended, it is really, it's been a centerpiece now for over a decade in the music industry, and this new direction of expanding into entertainment and to tech is really exciting, and it's very specific Georgia. I love it. It's very specific Georgia, so we're excited to be here and to share what we're doing at Trilith.
Well, listen, I want to come visit. I haven't been. I just need you to know.
No, that's not true.
I have not been.
Are you serious?
You got to describe.
How long have we known each other?
Forever. Things happen, but I'm going to come by. Tell
See, I
people,
thought when Paula was here last time, you came.
y'all went. She went. I had to
Oh,
run the
I'm
Atlanta
sorry.
campus.
Oh my
You
gosh.
know, I had to do that.
Okay.
Kind of thing. But I want, like, describe for people at home. It's not just like these big sets. You're doing something a little bit different with your studio. And why is
Okay,
it
well,
different?
Trillith, this is what's interesting. We sort of pivoted when we bought out the interest in Pinewood and took another direction. We expanded our direction. As you know, Pinewood's a great facilities company.
Right.
Always will be. They're really the best. We wanted to expand into sort of from purpose-built facilities to a purpose-built place.
Okay.
So that included making investments in content and technology, but also in building a town.
Right.
As part of the studio. So we'll have 1,400 homes done in the next few years here. We have about 300 now. We have about 600 people living there. We have restaurants, office buildings.
Okay, this is like a live, work, play.
It's
okay?
basically,
live, work, right.
if we could do the contemporary version of what Mr. Disney did in
Okay,
Burbank,
you're feeling
you know, where, and as you know, it's so beautiful where we are. Atlanta is such a beautiful place,
Yes,
and South
yes.
Metro is beautiful. You know, and our producers from London and Los Angeles, they fly in to the most traveled airport in the world. 20 minutes later, they're on our sets.
They're right there.
And, you know, we're the second largest studio facility, purpose-built studio facility in North America, with now over 1,000 acres, and including the town. And it's just, the way we look at it, we're building a place where the brightest minds can come and execute on anything they can imagine. So that's why we look to your students.
Okay,
'Cause
yes.
we're looking
We'll
for
send
the
them over
brightest
there. We'll
minds to
send them over
come,
there.
do anything they can imagine.
Okay.
That's what we're building.
All right. Now, for someone, you know, I'm thinking about this industry, and we're going to be talking with Paul Judge and venture capitalists, and
Paul's amazing.
How does that intersect with your world? How people
In
understand?
every way possible.
Okay.
I mean, everything we do is driven. And by the way, the film business and storytelling in the contemporary modern world has been driven by technology. So what Paul and other tech innovators
everyone,
here
right.
in Atlanta have done so well is find new and emerging opportunities.
Okay.
So for example, what just happened with Mark Golan and Rhodey and UPS,
Oh my gosh.
that's so exciting.
Right,
And that's
right.
UPS with their headquarters here in Atlanta, being in touch with our tech ecosystem, in this case Mark and what he was doing with Rhodey. That is an Atlanta story, right?
Right.
And there are many of them being driven here at
That
the
are
intersection
driven
between the film industry,
Right.
entertainment more broadly, and tech here in Atlanta. It's exciting.
Wow. Okay. Now, Frank, we have a couple more minutes, but do you have any concerns about the future of film, TV? What are we missing? What are the gaps? What else do we need to do? Any threats to this industry, or what are you thinking?
I mean, setting aside some of the larger global threats that we all worry about, you know, having just come mostly through a pandemic and what's going on in the world, setting that aside, there is no ceiling to the opportunity right now because, as an example, regardless of what you think of driverless cars, you know, Tesla updated a few versions ago where it came with a new Netflix and came with a free Netflix subscription.
Wait,
So-
drive it and watch it TV. Hold on.
I know,
Hold on.
it sounds
Okay.
dangerous right now, but look, that represents almost 1 billion found hours of time. And so I like to believe that we're going to be working and taking
and
care of
turning it-
business.
yes,
No,
the
you know
car's
what we're going to be
driving,
doing?
yeah.
We're going to be consuming content. So there's
Catching up
just
all your
not
series,
enough,
yes.
There's literally not enough people and resources today to keep up with the channels of consumption that happen today.
Right.
It's only going to become a bigger challenge and a bigger opportunity in the
Okay.
years to come. So that's
Well,
it.
Frank, see, that was easy. That was easy. This guy thought I was going to put him on the spot. I mean, it's a conversation. I am so
Yeah,
impressed
that's
by
great.
all that you've done in the few short years here in Atlanta. I look forward to much more. And again,
Thanks,
sending our
Audra.
SCAD students
Appreciate
your
it.
way.
Yeah, and
Proud
thank
of
you. And I really appreciate
Yes.
what you're doing at SCAD.
Yes.
It makes a huge difference for our industry.
All right, well, here to help. So stay tuned. We got some more coming through A3C Festival. I think Paul Judge, some other great tech innovators in this space in Atlanta. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Audrey.
closing session for the Innovation Studio as really A3C gets started. I'm joined once again by Andra Pittman.
Hey y'all,
who's been
hey.
with us this afternoon, and I thought it would be perfect to close our first Innovation Studio by Mailchimp with two gentlemen who have really been catalysts for the innovation economy here in Atlanta. We have David Cummings and Paul Judge. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us. Glad to be here.
So listen, just kind of starting kind of just broadly, we're at such a moment. I mean, this week, you know, not just because we're back in person, but Adventure Atlanta and all the events taking place this week here, because you feel the energy, but we're getting announcements every day. You know, whether it's Mailchimp or another unicorn.
We just had another unicorn this week, Spanx.
Oh, Spanx.
Oh,
that's
yes.
right.
Yeah.
Go Sarah.
Great deal.
We love Sarah.
So, I know you all know this is not an overnight thing, but just kind of reflect on this moment, how we get here. What are your thoughts about where we're at today? And Paul, may start with you on this.
You know, it's kind of that, you know, overnight success, a decade in the making.
Exactly.
Right. So many of these companies that are in the headline today, like someone started working on it 7 years ago, 10 years ago, and those number of years ago when they were telling somebody, people were saying, "Oh, you're crazy. That won't work. Why would you quit your job to do that?" And so, I mean, one thing about this kind of city, people are so have so much perseverance,
Right?
And like they're so scrappy. I mean, just the number of companies, even Spanx or like Mailchimp that we're just chatting about, you know, that bootstrap their way.
Right.
David
Right.
and sister bootstrap. But he's doing that with now the world recognizing the power of what's happening in Atlanta. And you see the size funding rounds that are happening here to fuel those companies. And with that coming together, like his history of been like having perseverance and been scrappy, but now with the right amount of fuel to take it to the next level, I think we're, you know, people say a lot is overused, like, oh, we're just getting started. But I think indeed, like, we're starting another chapter of what's going to happen here in Atlanta. And you mentioned the things happening this week of Venture Atlanta, A3C, you have tech and culture and all of this coming together. This is when the magic unlocks for us.
Right. David, what's your reaction?
Atlanta's been known to reinvent itself since the beginning of the city.
Right.
Even starting with different names. Terminus, Marthasville, Atlanta. You know, the name Atlanta was just the female version of Atlantic, as in the Atlantic Ocean. So the naming of Atlanta was for marketing purposes to make it more desirable.
Yeah.
So what we're doing as a city is we're just continuing to go back to our roots of marketing and selling and reinventing the city, and it's awesome to see it all blossom.
Gentlemen, we talked to Frank Patterson of Trilith, and we said, we're going to have David and Paul come on, and he's like, oh, they are so instrumental in what we're doing. And what I think is unique about Atlanta is like the culture, you said, music, tech, everything coming together. What do you see for the future? There are a lot of people who say, I got a great idea, I want to start this business, and they want to come to you. What do you see as the future of companies, and what are people investing in, and what's the future?
So I'll answer a slightly different question. We're at the first time ever in Atlanta's history where there's more capital chasing ideas than there are ideas chasing capital.
Wow.
That's never existed before in Atlanta. Do you agree?
There is
so much money.
It's an interesting way of thinking. There's more money.
There's so much money looking for startups than ever before.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that was really a tipping point from a community point of view. It's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur at all.
Alex, we have ideas.
So many deals.
Exactly. So we're setting up a pitch. That's what we're doing.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I agree. And sorry, going back.
Well, no, I'm just thinking, like, what do you see in the future?
Yeah.
What are people really interested in? What's successful? I mean, outside of Spanx, you know, I love me some Spanx, but you know, like, what's next?
You ask the question, someone has an idea. So David's point of, there's never been a better time. There's more capital looking for those ideas.
Right.
Also, if you have an idea right now, there's never been a better time to bring it to life in terms of no-code solutions, in terms of people understanding scalable go-to-market, the ability to reach a customer on social media,
right?
The cost of like SaaS and cloud-based systems. Right? If you go back 7 to 10 years, just to take your idea from your brain and code it and go get a data center, it was a big leap.
Right.
Now it's more accessible, so the average person that maybe didn't go down the street to Georgia Tech for X years or wherever can bring their idea to life, and there's capital to fund it. It's an amazing time that's happening. On top of that, if you look at some of the things that are happening that are bringing tech and culture together, I mean, look at what's happening in the blockchain and NFT world right now. You know, companies and creators have been able to take control of their IP, and bring that online and monetize it and connect with their fans and creators. And so when you started the question about what they're doing at the studio on the film side, I think that's a perfect blend of kind of how film and music and tech are coming together right now.
Listen, Austin Webster, our SCAD grad, went deeper and looking at music and how do you promote music and show the producers and the backside of it. I think there are a lot of great ideas out there. So, I mean, how does this affect Atlanta, just in general, and Georgia as a state? What are some other things people need to be aware of that are happening here?
Well, from an Atlanta point of view, we have so many amazing industries, right? People typically think of Atlanta, you know, Delta and Home Depot, but you peel back the layers and you just look at supply chain, you look at logistics. Obviously, I'm biased, but the marketing, MarTech, sales and marketing, you know, we have so many unicorns in Atlanta that are in the sales and marketing space that it's phenomenal. So Paul knows, being in the cybersecurity world, once you get that critical mass, once you get some expertise and some capital, and then first, second, third generation entrepreneurs, it just becomes so much better to build the future, having that critical mass in an industry. So having more wins creates more wins, and we're seeing it firsthand.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, like the work you've done to kind of give back and create that next generation, you know, we're doing the same, but then you mentioned all the industries that are in Atlanta, but then you asked about Georgia. So you go down the street to Augusta and see what's happening with cybersecurity. You go down the street to Savannah and see what's happening with the port and logistics and supply chain. And then as you extend from there to the south and southeast, you know, in this kind of post-COVID or a new kind of world of living where there's been an exodus from some of the major traditional hubs like San Francisco and New York, and more people are living in Atlanta and Miami and Austin. I think it's just more reason for Atlanta to do more towards being a hub of the Southeast, right? So we just, for example, did Startup Showdown in Miami 2 weeks ago, and had a great time and funded a couple companies in that ecosystem. We're going to Charlotte next month, and so I think kind of you know Atlanta being this hub for this region goes back to some of the original naming that David was mentioning.
Right. And it's interesting, you're talking about
marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's interesting, you're talking about the different industries here, and it's sometimes it becomes a problem. How do you describe what we do? But it is amazing. We have everybody from, we have Norfolk Southern now based here. We have Coca-Cola. We have esports. But it seems like that's really a great draw for talent as well, and entrepreneurs. Is that important in terms of kind of building this ecosystem as well? That to draw talent is the diversity of industry.
Well, entrepreneurs want to be in a vibrant city.
Yeah.
If a young person asks me just what's one general piece of advice, my first piece of advice is just go to a city that's growing.
Yeah.
It's that simple. Pick a city that's growing fast, and there's going to be so many opportunities. Of course, I'm biased towards the startup world and the tech world and all the great industries that we have, but by being a growing city, we're constantly reinventing ourselves, we're constantly pushing the limit of what's possible. And a growing city, frankly, is more attractive for all kinds of talent, not just young talent.
And one thing I want to, and Paul kind of getting a responsibility on this, on the creative side as well too, because you've been from the beginning. The biggest advocate is we have to talk about a creative community. I know Audra loves this part.
I do, SCAD.
But,
we talk about the creative.
But kind of what's that context of, how is it becoming real that why is it so important for you that we connect that creative with tech to make Atlanta unique?
Because, it's often said that like tech's eating every industry, but in reality, tech is becoming life. And it's the way we communicate with our kids, the way we communicate with our families, the way we order food, it's the way we get around. And so the line between what is tech and what is lifestyle, what is culture, is going away. And as you look at kind of consumerization of tech, even like enterprise solutions, you look at companies like a Dropbox or a Slack, like it worked its way up from a consumer using it on a phone to being a multi-billion-dollar company. And so the next generation of large tech companies are going to be driven by like, what are we doing socially? Like, what are we talking about? How are we exchanging information? And what drives consumer behavior? Culture. And what's the number one city in the world for driving culture? It's ours, Atlanta. And so it is our rightful place to drive this next wave of consumerization of tech. And so we have to be paying attention, and we have to be intentional about bringing the parties together that are all right here down the street from each other.
And this has been a big part of, you're talking about SCAD, it's just this connectivity.
It is, and it's been a big draw for us. I think I was telling people earlier, we welcomed our largest class ever, and I was telling Frank, we're sending our students to you, we're sending our students to, whatever, and there's a lot of collision, and I think a lot of times people think of creative, they're like, oh, fine art, painting. Well, no, it's user experience, it's industrial design. It's
video games,
gaming, there's motion media, animation, so there's so much involved in the creative industries. I think if people are more open to the possibilities, that's what exists in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
Now I want to know,
Now, real quick, an example of a awesome Atlanta creative startup.
Yes.
There's a multi-million-dollar revenue startup in town that makes synthetic celebrities.
What? I didn't know about this.
Synthetic celebrities.
What do you
Also known as virtual humans.
Okay, ARVR.
Virtual humans. So they create Instagram accounts of people that don't exist, that tell stories, that have pictures. They create TikTok characters. Synthetic celebrities.
And they're
multi-million-dollar revenue business right here in Atlanta.
Wow.
And it's part creative, part culture.
Well, and user experience too is, to me, is a blend of creative and tech, right? And every company from Delta to a startup, I know it's a big demand probably for all your companies. They're probably looking for user experience, folks. It's definitely a big demand as well.
So I want to know something. 10 years ago, did you expect this level of success? What would you tell someone? We learned this, or we didn't expect this, or what kind of things would you, reflecting back, maybe 10, maybe 20, I mean, you're only 20 years old, I don't know. What would you kind of looking back say, wow, it was great that Atlanta did this, or it's great that this happened, and this helped the success of having too much money to give out?
We don't have too much money.
Okay.
But we do have the most ever.
Okay, most ever.
I would say that from a hindsight point of view, it was always entrepreneur-led.
Okay.
We love the Chamber. We love all the great Fortune 500 companies in town. But really, it's been entrepreneur-led.
Okay.
Guys like Paul, guys down at ATDC, at the Tech Village, and others. Being entrepreneur-led has made a huge difference. So we love the Chamber. We love everybody else that is part of the community. But at the end of the day, the entrepreneurs have to want it.
Well, but I think that they're also reshaping even how a chamber even thinks as well, too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that, entrepreneur-led?
It has been. It has been. And, entrepreneurs love to find problems to solve, and we love to go solve problems that aren't necessarily in our traditional, core. But it's like, what's missing? And so you go back 10 years, you looked up and said, hey, the city needs Atlanta Tech Village. We looked up and said, oh, the city needs Tech Square Labs, or it needs a startup competition, or, now, hey, there needs to be more capital, so we kind of combine and we created Panoramic Ventures. And so it's always this next question of, okay, what's missing? What can we bring together? And kind of how can we help the city kind of unlock its next layer or next level? So you asked me 10 years ago, I think we knew the ingredients were here. Right? I always point so much. I just drove through Georgia Tech's campus to get here, right? And I was behind the bus and whatnot, and you always feel nostalgic. But I mean, so much of it is all the talent that's there across all these different engineering schools and disciplines. And then, obviously that branches out to all the other schools, SCAD and Georgia State and Morehouse, et cetera. but so much of it is there, and kind of we had all this deep tech, right? And there's over $1 billion a year of research that happens right down the street.
Yeah.
And so we knew we had this rich IP, right? And then you blend it with kind of all the other things. You mentioned kind of the marketing expertise, the design expertise, the culture. And it's all been about, to me, like how fast can we bring it together?
Wow, yeah.
Right, and so we have success. There's an argument that we could have had this success or bigger earlier.
Right.
I think it's on us to like, how fast do we bring it together? We're still a little bit like a high school dance.
Right.
Where kind of the guys on one side, the girls on the other side. So it's still kind of, the tech crowd is kind of over here, the corporate crowd is kind of over here,
right.
the celebrities, the music, it's still, and so things like this are bringing it together.
That's why we're literally here.
But there's a way we could accelerate it even more. So the next phase isn't necessarily 10 years from now, it's 3 years from now, it's 4 years from now.
Immediately.
So that's a big reason why you got involved with A3C, because you wanted to make sure you blended creative and tech, right?
Indeed. And I joke sometimes that part of the reason is when people were talking about what's kind of the best cities outside the valley for startups, you'd often hear Austin in there. Austin's a beautiful city, there's amazing people there. But one thing they had every year was South by Southwest.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a reason for everyone in the country to come visit their city every year. And we sat here in Atlanta, we had all these like precious jewels, but there wasn't like a reason or motivation to invite the world to our city. And we said, hey, how do we align some of the things that are happening to help create that week, right? So how do we help align from Venture Atlanta to the Chamber Film Fest to A3C and Techstars, thank you. And kind of give a reason for us all to congregate through a week. And so that's why we ended up acquiring, with the gathering spot A3C a couple years ago. And I think I love the direction we're all going together.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's a great way to celebrate our moment every year too. So I want to take a little bit of what Audra mentioned and talk about the next 10 years. You mentioned like taking in 3 or 5 or 10. What is Atlanta going to be like in terms of kind of innovation ecosystem? And let's think even beyond startups, including corporate.
How do we keep that talent here?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to tell my students. Just stay here. This is the place to be.
But what is Atlanta? What is it for the next 5 or 10 years, and what are the things that we need to collectively be doing to kind of get there?
So one of the pieces that we have missing, where we have great momentum around, is local, publicly traded tech companies.
Oh wow!
Right. So all of our unicorns in town. Once you hit unicorn status, that means that you're pre-IPO, 9 times out of 10. And so we need large anchor tech companies in town, because once you're publicly traded, you get tons more publicity, analyst coverage, news coverage. And so that's an ingredient that we have all of the pieces ready to go. 10 plus unicorns right in Atlanta, but now we need some high-flying IPOs, and then those companies need to become anchor companies in the community for the next decade or 2.
That's a key point. It's a key ingredient that happens in the Valley. And those companies, with their big campuses, obviously create lots more jobs, but then they become acquirers of other local companies.
Right.
Oftentimes right now, we have more funding here than we've had in the past, but we don't have that many natural acquirers in our own ecosystem.
That's right.
Right, and so as you make those big companies, David's saying, they have a lot of benefits. Beyond that, I think there's still so much. Atlanta still, we talked about kind of being on different sides of the dance floor.
Yeah.
I think the connectivity of the rest of Georgia is kind of a next phase for us as a city, as a region, as a state.
Right.
There's so much activity happening in other cities that are 1 or 2 hours away. And if you look at what's happening in Macon, and you look at Augusta and cybersecurity, as we bring that together, and look, it takes an hour or 2 to get there. That's not that far.
Yeah.
It takes me that long to get from San Jose to San Francisco. Right? And so if we, don't treat the different cities in our own state as, like they're that far away, and we collaborate more and start to kind of do more matchmaking and partnership, I think there's just this next level that will happen as Georgia, right? Not just as Atlanta, but as Georgia. And so I get pretty interested in that nowadays. I've spent a lot of time up and down the road meeting entrepreneurs and meeting companies in other cities around the state.
Well, we're about to wrap up here, and as you hear the music get louder and so forth,
this is when you freestyle, right?
This is what I'm going to freestyle.
That's right.
I'm ready for that.
You have to subscribe for that, though, so sorry.
Premium level.
But I know a lot of founders follow both of you, so if there was kind of a one-sentence piece of advice you could give them to say in terms of, as they get started or continue and try to get their next round of funding, whatever it is, what's a piece of advice you would give them?
My advice is, obviously dream big, but like focus. Because there's so much capital right now, because there's so many new industries, you can really get distracted. And so much success comes from long-term focus, being long-term greedy. Right. We've been patient and paying attention to the details. Kanye has this thing about being locked away, making 3 beats a day for the whole summer. It's really that. How do you really zone in and focus and build what you're building and solve the problem that you're solving and ignore the noise?
Right.
Okay.
David.
My favorite piece of advice is the entrepreneur has to learn faster than the startup is growing. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they get caught up in what's right in front of them, keeping the lights on, paying the bills, whatever that stage is of the journey. And the entrepreneurs that have achieved the greatest level of success that I know have all been learning machines. They've all figured out a way to learn faster than the startup is growing. So that they're always staying ahead. They're always gathering more knowledge, more peers to bounce ideas off of, more groups to join. Whatever the case is, you got to learn faster than your startup is growing.
Excellent.
Life lessons.
Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. Well, good. Well, Paul and David, thank you again for everything you're doing. I know you've been incredible leaders, and it is entrepreneur-led for sure. Yet both of you have also been very engaged with the corporations, with the schools, with capital, and to help Atlanta grow. And I'm looking forward to the next 10 years. And Audrey, thanks for joining us this afternoon, hanging out with us here at A3C, a great place to be hanging out. Yeah. And thanks everybody for watching the last 3 days. And as we wrap up here at A3C at the Atlanta Innovation Studio, and thank you to Mailchimp for making this happen.